Welcome to the Kling Connection Travel Talk podcast, where the world of travel comes to life through real conversations. Hosted by Sean Kling, each episode explores the highs and lows of life on the road, connecting with travelers, industry insiders, and digital nomads to uncover expert tips, budget hacks, and inspiring stories. Whether you're a weekend explorer, a full-time adventurer, or simply wanderlust curious, Sean brings first-hand advice, destination insights, and honest takes from those shaping the global travel scene. Join Sean Kling.
Hey, Kling Connection fam. Today we have an amazing guest. Her name is Katherine Parker-Magyar, and I'm going to tell you what, this lady has seen it all. She has been around the world. She is all over social media. She is an awesome writer, photographer, you name it. She's been around, and I am just so impressed to have her on this show today. And she's going to share a lot of her knowledge about travel hacks, places to go, things to see, things to do. I mean, we could probably talk to her for about 3 hours, so we're going to have to try to narrow it down a little bit. But I'm going to tell you, we're really blessed to have her on the show. And without further ado, I'm going to say, hey, Katie, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Thanks for coming on. And where can people find you on the internet if, during this process of the show, they want to look up and see, a little bit more about you and your life experiences?
My full name is Katherine Parker-Magyar. So that's my website, my Instagram handle. And then I have a newsletter that you can sign up for via my website too. And that I share recent stories on Instagram, Twitter, and my newsletter.
Oh, awesome. Okay. So Katie, like we do with everybody, I'd like to know, what's your upbringing? Where you come from in the world? What got you traveling? What got you interested in traveling? Were you into it as a little girl? Did you go to college? I'd love to learn about what sparked this dynamic and this extreme amount of travel.
I feel like you really have to blame my parents because growing up, I'm the oldest of 4 kids, and both my parents loved to travel. And when they had kids, they sort of really just brought us along. I was at all 50 states by the time I was 13. I was above the Arctic Circle in Alaska when I was 15 months old. But I think that a lot of my love for travel started as a kid, doing these cross-country road trips from New Jersey, which is where I'm from, to California and back. And I just remember being 9 or 10 years old, and you're in the car, and, there was a line they had that we're not going to stop until we're past the Mississippi River. So I learned a lot about, you see the world, the country unfold outside your window. It gave me a huge appreciation for how vast and different the United States are, each state. And also learning that travel isn't always comfortable. I'd be like, are we there yet? And my parents would be like, you're going to fall asleep. You're going to wake up. You're going to fall asleep again, and you still won't be there. So just sort of learning to appreciate the journey. And I think I do credit my parents a lot because I think that your parents teach you what to appreciate in a way. So my dad is a huge history buff, and we would visit a lot of sites of we'd visit Native American preservations, cultural festivals, cultural events. I learned a lot about, Native American history and then the history of the West. But then I think we did our first trip abroad. That I remember being abroad was probably when I was 13, 14. We went to Europe, and that was just so eye-opening. And I guess I've always had this feeling that I just want to go everywhere. I don't remember ever not being curious about a place. And a lot of places we visited were sort of beyond what would be stereotypical travel. I remember my dad's family, he's 100% Transylvanian. And when I was a freshman in college, we did a trip. I joined them for part of it because I think I was working as a reporter at the time. But we went sort of Serbia, Bosnia, Bulgaria, saw Turkey, Istanbul for the first time, which was spectacular. And just learning about the history of the place and how big the world is. And I think it's just a base level curiosity. I want to know what the sky looks like. I want to see what people are eating. How does the city smell? there's nowhere, and to this day, there's nowhere in the world I wouldn't want to go. Like any place I haven't been is on my list, just from that baseline perspective.
That's really cool. I mean, and you've been to all 50 states, right?
I have. That was really exciting for me because my mom is a writer and my dad is a writer. And my mom was, she was president of the National Newspaper Association, and they would have different press meetings at different states around the country. And I was in middle school when they had their meeting in Maui. And I remember it was a big deal because my mom pulled me out of school for several days, and that was heaven. But just being her plus one, and that was my 50th state. And as a journalist, Hawaii was actually the first destination that really brought me on a press trip, brought me on a work trip, felt like a full circle moment. And yeah, I felt like from a very young age, I knew I wanted to travel a lot. Every book I read, I think books, my local bookstore, I'm in my parents' house right now in New Jersey. I live in New York, but it's called Bookworm in Bernardsville. And they were like, books, reading is the only way you can travel for free without delays. And I think that's a huge reason that I wanted to travel was reading books. And now I know social media can also inspire people. I hope my travel writing inspires people too, because I've had stories, like I've read a story about Tasmania when I was 20 years old on a JetBlue flight, a Ryanair flight to like Porto. And I just made my way to Tasmania earlier this year. But I'd wanted to go for a decade plus ever since reading that article. I think of this Henry James quote where it's like she had everything that she wanted, but she had a feeling that there'd be more she wanted if she only knew about it. And I feel like with travel, the more places I go, the more I'm like, oh, what's going on in Namibia? Like you go to, it's almost like it shines a light on a part of the world. And
so you're a journalist, and like as a journalist, you get to experience things you're embedded with. Not only, most people think of journalism and they go for politicians and stuff, but you're embedded with the everyday people. You're learning about their life and the world. And like, who do you write for, and who are you associated with, and over the course of your career, who have you worked with?
Yeah, so I've written for like National Geographic, Architectural Digest, Forbes. Like I'm writing for Global Traveller magazine, Business Insider, Matador, etc. A bunch of different places. And I think it depends on the subject matter for the kind of pieces I'm writing. For example, Global Traveller can do a mix of like leisure and business travel. So I'll sometimes be able to spotlight destinations like, I don't know, like Costa Rica or something that can accommodate both. For Business Insider, I've got a 50 state series where I'm focusing on, I've been to all 50 states. Here are the 10 best ones for food or art or national parks. And then for Nat Geo and New York Observer, I'm doing a lot of like East Coast travel. So like particularly in the summertime, New England. I started writing for the Opry Chronicles because one of my beats is really skiing and the American West. So it totally depends on the trip I'm on, and that will dictate sort of what magazines and what editors I think it will work for, because obviously every publication has like a different angle.
So you've been to all 50 states, and I got to ask, if you had to pick your top 5 favorite 50 states, like all inclusive, like they have good food, they have good entertainment, they have good outdoor activities, the people are nice, the traffic is good, what would be your top 5 favorite and why?
Yeah. So I've written this story before. I was luckily given like 10 maybe, but I do have to caveat that travel is always subjective. Like I can say what my top 5 are, but so I like writing narrative stories because you have to put yourself in it. But I really will, I think my top 1 would be Wyoming, because I really believe that it's that Jackson Hole, Grand Teton, sort of the western part of the state is one of the most beautiful places on the planet. Like I've been to places in the world that can remind me of it a bit, like Wanaka in the South Island of New Zealand reminds me of Jackson Hole, but it's just it's a majestic landscape that is just surreal, because the Tetons are the teenagers of the Rockies. So, there are snow-covered peaks and it's so flat, and then just out of nowhere, they're rising from the land. I think it's what people think of when they think American West. And I love Colorado. I love Montana. But Colorado, you're at a higher elevation, like even in Aspen, the other mountains aren't as dramatic. And Montana has gorgeous parts, but I don't think there's anywhere that's as stunning. So Wyoming would be number one. Number two, this is tough because emotionally, I want to say Rhode Island because I think the ocean state, Rhode Island is absolutely gorgeous. And there are so many cool towns you can visit there, like beyond like Newport, like Narragansett, Little Compton, Weekapaug, Watch Hill. Yeah, I'm going to say Rhode Island emotionally, but I also think Massachusetts. If you haven't been to New England, so I don't know if you could put them as the same, but I would say these summer towns. I'm going to have to swap Rhode Island for Massachusetts because I think Massachusetts is better as a visitor because you can do Cape Cod and then you can go out to Martha's Vineyard and Nantucket, which I feel like you don't need to belong to a club, particularly like in Cape Cod and all those places, actually. The beaches that are free are gorgeous. Third would be, New York City. I know Truman Capote has that quote, it's the only real city in the world. And I do believe that. Like, it's the only place I feel. And I've been in cities everywhere that, you can be out at 3 a.m. and everything is popping. It's the most diverse. I know London is technically more diverse, but when you're on a subway, and particularly now I've traveled the world, like I'm always amazed at how many different languages I'm hearing and it's really a melting pot. I think it's like the best of America. Then number 4, I would say is Hawaii. Like, I don't think Hawaii, we stole Hawaii kind of, but you can barely imagine it as it's Polynesian. And going to Kauai, I think, I've been to all 7 islands. They're amazing. They're all very different, but I think you'd be hard pressed to find a more beautiful landscape on earth than Hawaii. Hawaii's beautiful. Yes. Weirdly the most isolated island chain in the world too. And then 5, I would have to go with Alaska. I've done Alaska in the winter and I've done Alaska in the summer. And again, I don't know, I count, they're not part of the continuous states, but I think there's a reason for that. Alaska is truly just the vastness of the wilderness there. I went heli-skiing and it was only a state park, but anywhere else in, the country, I'm like, this would be a national park. And just that it feels wild and definitely untouched, but then there are such cool cultures and history there. Like, I met with the Tlingit tribe when I was in Ketchikan, and Fairbanks is this cool artsy little city north of Anchorage. Anchorage in itself, I went to the Iditarod there, is so cool. So yeah, Alaska, California, New York, Massachusetts, and Wyoming.
So you were at the Iditarod. That's really cool. You're the first person I've ever met that's been to the Iditarod. What's that like?
It's fantastic. It feels like an Alaska. It is an Alaskan holiday. It's like a celebration of the culture and heritage because, mushing, that used to be the way that you got around.
Yeah.
There's still places in Alaska that the reason that it has more plane ownership per person is because there aren't roads,
Right.
It was super fun. It starts early in the morning and then just becomes sort of like all day revelry. It's like very exciting because it's sort of, they say to go for the beginning or there are different places you can see the Iditarod, or you can like see the mushers. But I think the kickoff is the best because it's called the, oh my goodness, there's a reindeer festival that's associated. Like, there are just all these different events. And all I would say is just get crazy socks and serious cold weather shoes. That was the coldest place I feel. And I've been to Antarctica and the Arctic. And that morning at the Iditarod, I was in LL Bean duck boots that aren't even fleece lines. And I felt like I was going to lose sensation in my toes. But thankfully, it's a drinking holiday too. So you sort of drink and overcome it.
Yeah, that keeps you warm.
So awesome.
So it's kind of cool though. You've been to the Iditarod and then, I just heard you mention that you were at the complete opposite end of the world in Antarctica.
Yeah.
Wow.
That was my continent with my mom. Mom and I went together.
Antarctica, I would love to travel to Antarctica. And that seems to be like kind of gaining popularity. It is an expensive trip unless, you're working for somebody. But some of the stuff I've seen in Antarctica, like when you land there, you have to wear like booties over your boots and you can't handle certain stuff because of potential sicknesses that can get into the animal population or into the snow and the ice and stuff like that. So what did you do in Antarctica?
Yeah. So I went with my mom on a Viking expedition on Polaris. And it was just, it was the dream trip. There's no way to really even describe how beautiful Antarctica is, because it's beautiful in its starkness. Like, you've never seen more shades of blue and white in your life, and the sun doesn't set in the wintertime, but it will cast, like, it almost feels like it's a perma sunset. And then in 2 a.m. it casts this golden glow, and it's so changeable. It can go when it's blue, when it's a sunny day, you feel like you're in heaven. You can still get a sunburn down there because you are still close to the sun. It looks like heaven. You've got these white, pristine mountains. Like, there are mountains higher than Wyoming in Western Antarctica. I did the Antarctic Peninsula. And then when it's overcast, it's unbelievable how quickly it can turn. You feel like a true explorer, and you're treated like one. I know you mentioned the precautions. They have extreme precautions to maintain the purity of the landscape, because it's integral to, like, the existence of the planet now at this point. Like,
yeah.
But I would really recommend and caution travelers really look at IATO, make sure that the cruise or the expedition that you're going on is compliant with IATO, which is International Antarctic Treaty Organization, maybe something. Don't quote me on that, but it's pretty much making sure that it follows specific regulations. So yeah, you have specific gear that you're given that you wear if you go and have a landing on an island, and then you're hosed off when you get back on the boat, and you get everything approved, from like your hats to your mittens that you're wearing on the islands, so that you don't you can transport diseases to land very easily. And it takes forever to get dressed, for sure. Like, my mom and I feel like it was a 30, 45 minute situation. But the thing is there's no place that's too cold. You just don't have the right gear. And one thing that was great with Viking was that, that we were able to keep our jackets, but they gave us 2 layers of jackets, the overall pants, the boots. So you were really comfortable when you were.
What was it like going through the Drake Passage? Was that pretty rough? Like, the waters there, everybody around the world knows how rough the Drake Passage is.
So it's either called a Drake Shake when it's tough, or a Drake Lake when it's easy. And I think I got a Drake Lake on the way down and a bit of a shake on the way back. But I will say, don't stay in your cabin. Like, my friend, who's another travel writer, was doing work, because we were all like, okay, we're losing Wi-Fi soon. Like, I remember when we saw the last bit of land in South America, so we were obviously on deadline, because what writer does not procrastinate? Right. And I remember being like, do not work in your cabin, and she ends up getting really sick, because the secret is you want to be in as open a place as possible. This is where it comes in, where I do think you want to invest a bit more in a bit more of a luxurious ship, because unlike other cruises where you're disembarking, maybe you spend an overnight, there's no like port city you're landing in. You are going to spend a lot of time in the ship. They had this cool explorer's lounge, which was like a great bar with like the floor to ceiling windows. And my mom and I on the way down just like drank Baileys, and we felt good. We were fine. It was fun. I was hesitant to do the Dramamine patch, but those were sort of like drugs on the boat. People were like, who's got more? Who's got more? And you could, you put it behind your ear. And it seems like that's the move. Knock on wood, I don't really get seasick, and I didn't get seasick on the way down or the way back. We would go down to one of the cool lounges on the first floor to see how high the waves were, because it is shocking. But if you start to feel weird, go outside and look at the horizon. Right. Like, it sounds like counterintuitive. Maybe you're like, I'm going to try to just fall asleep in my bed, but that is going to make you more sick. Like, go outside, look at the horizon, decide if you're going to drink through it or not, So right. It really wasn't that bad.
So if I'm a new traveler, and obviously we have so much to talk about today, but if I'm a new traveler and I say, okay, I want to go to Antarctica, if you could give us some tips and maybe some ideas on, if I'm a novice, somebody that's brand new, like one of our listeners, not an experienced world traveler like yourself, if I'm a novice and I just don't know anything to do, who would you recommend? What are some hacks that you would give to somebody to go to Antarctica? The reason I would recommend the Viking cruise with the Polaris is because I believe that if it's a trip like Antarctica where you're spending a lot of money, it makes sense to go with someone that feels the same way you do, is close to you. Like, it's a bonding for life situation. And
often what I saw a lot of, and I think this isn't a part of travel that's undercovered, that's under discussed or, underrepresented, is parent-child trips, but where the child is sort of leading adult children with parents. Like I saw so many mothers and daughters and fathers and daughters and fathers and sons. So I would recommend a trip that is a blend of luxury and adventure, because you are going to spend way more time on this boat than you normally would. Like there was a cool spa and like there was like an outdoor hot tub. Like you're not going to be spending as much time on land as you would in like another cruise. So I would identify if there's anyone in your life who wants to do it with you, partially too, because then you're going to be sharing things like, if you're getting a cabin for two, I mean, it's easier usually if you're like splitting it down the middle. And then I would decide the angle for the trip. Like, do you want to do a crazy adventure Antarctica expedition? Like there are different companies and outfitters that do specialize in that, and that's the overnight camping. And that is, sometimes you could do a polar plunge. And then if you're going with someone, with a parent or a grandparent or a kid, like I think finding a good, well-rounded trip that accommodates, like the Viking was, I feel that accommodates both. And then they only go in Antarctica summertime. So, December through, I believe the last one is mid-March. And I think it starts either mid-December or I think it does start late November. I kind of recommend January because you want to go for like the best possible weather, because whenever there's inclement weather, you can't land. So yeah, I would say January because I think that has max sunlight. And then I would say the third thing is to like travel is in itself a surprise. Travel in Antarctica is almost like going on safari. It's not a zoo. You know what I mean? You're subject to, this iceberg is floating this one way. Like you're going to get your itinerary. Don't be married to it because it's going to change. Like we were so far south, people were using maps, it wasn't even digitized where we were. But some of those changes can be beautiful. Like we ended up in Crystal Bay, south of the Antarctic Circle, partially to avoid this hurricane that was coming through. But then as a result, we didn't land in the exact same places. And there were some travelers on board who were getting so upset. And it's like, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity. You wanted to go to the most, the most remote part of the world. Come at it with the perspective of gratitude. I think in general with travel, you're excited to be there. If you let an itinerary change or an inconvenience impact your trip, then you might as well not have spent, the 20 grand to do that. I think that's just a general travel rule.
So you said it was a hurricane?
Yes, there was a hurricane that formed. So we sailed north a day earlier so we could avoid what would have been an insanely, it's still dangerous down there. So an insane Drake shake. But because of that, we got to spend a day in Patagonia that wasn't on the itinerary, which was also very cool. So that's just try to make lemonade out of it. You can't, places that are Antarctica, Alaska, when you're in the African bush, when you're sailing the Mekong, you're in the Amazon rainforest, you're no longer in charge, or the Arctic and Lapland. Mother Nature is the dictator for it. And that's part of the pleasure and joy of it. So you really have to go and approach it like I'm a traveler. I'm not a cosseted tourist.
I remember watching a documentary on a company out of, I want to say it was South Africa, that booked these cruises, and they were very regimented, and it was very expensive. It was not a cheap cruise to start out with, but it was very regimented, very regulated, and out of South Africa. And speaking of Africa, you were just in Africa, places like Botswana and stuff like that. And we see a lot of stuff on TV that makes Africa look scary and dangerous and stuff like that. But based on your pictures and stuff that I'm seeing, it might have been a little bit of that going on, but it seemed like most of the people were really great and that. But I'd love to hear about Africa because I've never been to Africa, and Africa could be anything from Egypt to South Africa and anything between.
Completely. I think my favorite country I've ever visited is Kenya, but I've done a significant amount. I mean, there are 54 African nations. So when you put it in perspective, I have so much more I want to see. But I visited Tunisia with my sister, who was based in Jordan at the time. And that was spectacular. And and Morocco, and those places feel very different. Northern Africa, it reminded me a lot of my travels in the Middle East, which is another region that I've really love traveling in, and the most gracious, kindest people. And I think similarly suffer from bad stereotypes in the US media, just like parts of Africa do. And then Kenya was my first time in sub-Saharan Africa. And that was a revelation. I cried almost every day. Kenyan culture is so rich and beautiful, and the people are so friendly and self-deprecating. And the sense of humor feels very similar to being from a large New Jersey family, where you're sort of, you get teased, you get made fun of. And the landscape was just anything beyond my wildest imaginations. Just I think it's what you think of when you think of like an African safari, like the orange sun, the skies in Africa. Paul Simon was on something with Under African Skies, because they've got these huge conserved swaths of lands. And a lot of it, they call it the Masai Mara, the spotted plains, because the clouds from above, the clouds make it look like there are spots all over the place. And you see these beams of sunlight come through the clouds, and just the guides at the national parks were so knowledgeable, and sleeping in a tent, falling asleep to the sounds of hippos, and going and visiting Nairobi, which was epic and so cool, and Nanyuki. And I just went back to Kenya for a second time a couple months ago. And then I did Rwanda, which I loved, so beautiful and very safe. Kigali is one of the safest cities for solo travelers in the world. And I feel like because of the horrific genocide, I think people still think just Hotel Rwanda. And they're shocked. I mean, it's gorgeous that for such a small country, I think it's the size of Maryland, maybe bigger. They've got the Big Five and these mountains, and it's the Great Lakes region. That's amazing. And then I went to Tanzania for the first time, which East Africa is my favorite region. I loved it. Seychelles, which is off the coast of East Africa, which was gorgeous. The island, my first African island. And then I did Botswana, which is another like apex safari destination for sure, but looks very different than Kenya, Tanzania, Rwanda, because it's almost like, so much of Botswana is desert because the Kalahari Desert is there. And it's the Akavanga Delta was named because there was a river that flowed through. It was called Kavanga or something, but it's crazy because it's so lush. So all the animals from all the countries are just sort of congregating there. Palm trees, so green, so many beautiful water deltas. It's a completely different landscape. Looks like the Garden of Eden. And then South Africa for the first time, which was amazing. And people in all the countries I visited, I feel like the hospitality is unparalleled. I'd never felt unsafe. I think that there are ways that you can insulate yourself from feeling unsafe or nervous in any country in the world. And if you're going somewhere that you don't speak the language and you haven't been before, booking a local guide is huge. And I think that goes hand in hand with booking a safari company that, if you're going to do safari, that benefits the local people, like Natural Selection, which is the camps I worked with in Botswana. They employ, it's like 70% from the local areas, and they have funds that every guest stay will go towards building a school. I saw this great it's called the Elephant Express bus that helps kids we were in Tuludi. So it was near Tuludi, that helps kids be able to go from their village to school when usually they couldn't, because the elephant crossing in the wet season would mean that it was too dangerous. So yeah, that's such a long-winded answer, but I do feel that they're amazing. It's less expensive than you would think with the exchange rate. It is expensive to go on safari. You pay per head in the national park. If you're a first-time safari goer and you're looking about costs and you're really not sure, the Four Seasons Serengeti is a great option, because then you're splitting a room with someone. You have the Four Seasons luxury. You're not in a tent in the middle of the wilderness, but I don't know. I think it's one of those trips that you got to cross off in your lifetime. And I would recommend Kenya, probably, or Botswana. But every country I've been to is amazing. Now,
if you're coming from like another place like we are, from the United States or Canada or even the EU someplace, do you recommend or do they require you to get certain shots, not drink the water? Are there certain things that, you want to take for your safety and health, for your physical health?
So I went to Kenya and China around the same time for the first time. And I got just like a bouquet of shots, like 5 or 6 years ago. But definitely like the yellow fever shot you want to get, the hepatitis shot you want to get. If you go to, I don't know how national it is, but Passport Health I find is a great resource because you can go. I went to Passport Health in New York City, gave them my itinerary. It's like, here are the required shots. Here are the suggested shots. I mean, I know people were freaking out about getting the COVID vaccine, but I'm like, I've been to countries where people are still dying of measles and polio, and you don't want to risk it. So the good news is a lot of these shots are good for about a decade plus.
Yeah, so you're not getting them every trip. You're getting them once. If at all. Right.
And I really recommend when you get it, take a photo of it, of your shot. Same with your passport. I've been stuck places where I've lost my passport. Like I had it, but I knew the number of it. I could show a picture of it, get a passport card, just tangentially tied to that. But yeah, there are usually, I mean, they'll have a list of recommended shots, but the only place I feel that I've been that really and truly checked was the Amazon rainforest. Like when I landed in Manaus, like I actually showed my shots. But I don't know. I've stopped taking my malaria pills because I'm not as worried about it where I've been recently. But I know some people, you can do that. I don't know. Just stay. I think when you stay on top of it and you get your shots once, keep the contact where you got the shots. Because when I lost my passport and I was going back to Kenya, I was able to email Passport Health, or I called them and they had me still on file.
So you went to all these countries. Were you doing journalism there in Africa as well? Were you writing a story, or was this more of a pleasure trip? Or
for work? All these stories that I've talked about have been for work. Tunisia was for pleasure. My sister was living in Jordan. We were like, what's halfway? But the trips I've taken in Africa have been for my job. I wish I could tell you that I was just going on safari every couple months, just like with a huge crew of friends. But I want to do like a big birthday party or something in Kenya. Like I want to organize it because I think it's on a lot of people's bucket lists, but they're very overwhelmed by the prospect.
Yeah. And
visit. They you know,
one thing that and a lot of people see on social media, whether it's YouTube or Instagram or Facebook or whatever, people see that, people such as yourself or people like Shana and I with the Kling Connection, or there's other people that do travel. They often think that we have this unlimited amount of disposable income that we can fly around the world and go, to Antarctica this week and Kenya next week and New Zealand the week after. And that's generally not the case. I mean, there are probably multi-millionaires that do that. But, when we do these things, a lot of times, there's a purpose where we're working, whether it's on our social media platforms or working as, in your case, as a journalism, or, in my case, I own an insurance company it allows me to travel. So there's different things. And you get out and you still have to perform a task. You still have to work, but you get to enjoy this nomadic lifestyle that a lot of people don't get to enjoy. And, I'm hearing about this great stuff in Africa and Antarctica. You stole my heart with Antarctica. That's like that's on my bucket list. But with Africa being so big and so diverse, and, when people say, oh, you're African, well, yeah, I could be Egyptian. I could be Somalian. I could be Kenyan. And the people are different. It's no different than any other continent. People are different. But what would you say, if I'm booking a trip to Africa, say, give me 3 really, and I know this is going to be tight for you because I can hear the love of Africa in your voice. And give me 3 really great locations, like a mountain or a jungle or a historical site that you would think that you've been to, and obviously you haven't been everywhere, that I should visit if I'm jumping on a plane and going over.
The first I would say is if you want to do safari, I would go to Kenya. Kenya has, it's the favorite country I visited, but Kenya has such a diversity of landscapes, cultures, people. It's also a nation where the tribes own the national parks. So the Masai Mara are the stewards, the Maasai are the stewards of the Masai Mara. The Samburu people are the stewards of, Samburu National Park to the north. And I think it's the best combination cultural, landscape, just experience. And you can go direct on Kenya Airways from New York. So, and when I'm going to Kenya, I would say, when you get there, spend a couple days in Nairobi. I love the Fairmont. I love the Tribe Hotel. I mean, the city itself is very cool. Don't just hop in and just take a Safari Link plane, because I mean, the culture and the people, in my opinion, are more fascinating and interesting and integral than the wildlife, you know, and it gives you want context and history of where you're going. So I think Kenya is just amazing at that. And they've also got the Kenyan coast, which is like super glamorous and chic. Like people, European jet setters, my fanciest friends are going to Lamu, and you can have a great city, safari, beach experience. So Kenya, this is tough. So if you have it, I would say Morocco for number 2, because I mean, Northern Africa, Morocco is spectacular because you've got Marrakesh, which is, I think, one of the most enchanting cities in the world, can be overwhelming. So, but there's nowhere like it, you know, stay in a Riyadh. And then the Atlas Mountains are just breathtaking. So I would say I loved Casbah, do Toubkal was one of my favorite places I've ever seen in the world. Go do that. And then Aswaria, the coast, you can go to the Sahara. I would say Kenya, Morocco. And then this is really tough, I guess, for the third, because I'm inclined to do something in Southern Africa. Like I love Botswana so much. I can't even express how much I love Botswana. But I really love Rwanda. I think I would maybe say Rwanda as my third, just because I think that the history of Rwanda and the genocide is not so many years ago. And, you know, they have the genocide memorials and the people, the history of the people. It's very inspiring. Like you can learn about the human heart and forgiveness. And Kigali is so cool. The city, it feels almost like Singapore meets Beverly Hills, like with the palm tree lined roads. And you can do the Big Five. If you go to the east side of the country, you can go to the Great Lakes region. You go to Lake Kivu, and then you go to the Virunga Mountains. You could do the gorilla trekking, and it's called the Land of 1,000 Hills. So every part of the country, like you can road trip the country, but every part has got these beautiful overlooks and like the best sunrise and sunset I've ever seen in my life. It's like has its own name. It's its own pink color. People name their kids after it. Mojitos, oddly, I've ever had. So for diversity of landscapes,
you would think about mojitos.
I love mojitos. I'm a big cocktail lover, but I feel Kenya, Rwanda, Morocco. But I love Botswana too, so it's hard. And South Africa. I feel like I'm cheating, but
it's not cheating. It's just kind of like a little close. Yeah. So, and then you talked about the Middle East. You know, and you know, a lot of people look at the Middle East and they say, okay, it's dangerous. And there are parts that are dangerous. There's things going on. Just anywhere else in the world is like that as well. But the Middle East, you know, most people don't realize most of the Middle East is Asia, or what they used to call Asia Minor back, you know, 1,000 years ago. And, you know, Dubai is really starting to pick up in a lot of popularity. You're seeing a lot of people, especially people from the United Kingdom, are going to Dubai a lot on vacation. You've been to Jordan. I believe you said your sister was stationed there in the military. Jordan is
not in the military. Thank God.
Oh, okay. I didn't know. I thought maybe she was stationed there in the military. But Jordan is a big ally to the United States and stuff. Like what, you know, where have you been in the Middle East and you know, what have you experienced?
So my favorite country I visited in the top 5 is the Kingdom of Jordan. When my sister was a Fulbright scholar there in college, and then she moved there and she was like working. She worked closely with Palestinian refugees. I've spent time in Palestine. I'd be really remiss not to just declare on this podcast that as someone who has been to Palestine, and Israel, it is the most heartbreaking. It's an apartheid state. There is a genocide happening there. Like I've been there. I was pulled over by the EDF. My brother was arrested in Jerusalem if you're not a Jewish person, you're asked why you're there. If you're an American in Palestine, you're interrogated. We had the IDF pull us over in the middle of the desert. It was terrifying. I've spent the most time in Jordan and Palestine. And I have to say that Arabic hospitality, like Middle Eastern hospitality, is unparalleled like anywhere else in the world. You don't realize your own prejudices and stereotypes until you go. This is why travel is important. And all those Anthony Bourdain and Mark Twain quotes. And It's travel is fatal for hatred, bigotry, narrow-mindedness. You don't even realize some of these internalized racism and prejudices you have. Like when I first got to Jordan, I remember the call to prayer would sort of startle me. I mean, even when we were in Jerusalem and Palestine, because you don't realize like the depiction of Middle Eastern people in the United States is horrific. People are silenced, they're killers, everyone hates America. You would think that everyone in the middle and I think part of this was Bush saying, we're attacking Al-Qaeda. Now Iraq has weapons. It just became I feel like it got solidified as one, not even individualized nations or an individualized people, just as one terrorist entity. And it's one of the most heartbreaking and enraging things in the world. Because when you go there, like there is like a lot of kindness. People, I stood out like a sore thumb. People are always like, oh, do you have to cover up? Like, no, I have light blonde hair. I was walking around. I was the only American in a lot of places. And my sister was like, you're coming from New York. So this is a culture of recognition. Like people will speak to you on the street. There is just that level. Right. Like, where are you from? And I'd be like, I'm Rika. And it's like, oh, welcome. Like everyone knew my sister in some of these places and would give us like free DVDs. Like Biff is the Rose of Jordan. Like just gifts. Like there's a Palestinian expression, eat as much as you love me. Like we went and stayed at one of the houses that one of Biff's colleagues, like his entire extended family was there, and 10 rounds of food. And Jordan was just the best because you've got Wadi Rum, which I'm an ocean person, but this is the best, most spectacular desert I've ever seen in my life. Oceanic, the sky turns purple. We made friends with our Bedouin guides who led us, actually, just me, my sister, my mom and dad, like almost, half a mile through the desert to meet his family. And then who was camping out in that one spot. And when you're in someone's house, it's a very matriarchal culture. Obviously, there are different levels of like, I've discovered leggings, period, don't really work anywhere. Don't wear them. In Europe, they're sloppy. In the end of the day, they're essentially tights. So I wouldn't be aware of how you're dressing. And also usually the locals know how to dress for the heat. Obviously, I think people are aware of this in the Middle East. You don't need to be a top and denim shorts. But I would caution to add that you were talking about how Middle East is part of Asia. I was shocked in parts of like Southern Asia where you're not supposed to have your shoulders or your knees exposed to go to a Buddhist temple, and people were doing that. So
traditional.
Yes.
Some things are very traditional.
And things are changing. And at the end of the day, I think the more I've traveled, the more I realize how much on a person-to-person basis people have in common. And people really hate their government, like all around the world. I was in China before COVID, right before COVID, and nobody liked their president there either. I don't like the current president. Like this, people aren't their governments. And also I think what keeps you safe somewhere keeps you safe everywhere. Like be kind, say thank you, learn how to say like marhaba, or hola, aloha, anything. Just learn. I always have in my notes app like hi, please, thank you, bye, I'm trying to speak XYZ. It just is a sign of respect that goes a long way.
Yeah.
And if you get frustrated or angry, people are not going to be inclined to help you. Think about how you treat someone, and think about how you treat someone on the street who would come up to you speaking only French.
Right.
I do believe
you wouldn't like it. You wouldn't like it. I mean, they do it in Canada, I guess, but some parts of Canada. But
and so there helps. Like my sister helped because she was fluent in Arabic. Like you always want to have someone who knows the place, Yeah,
the local languages and some of the customs, definitely. My sister-in-law is from Thailand. She's an American citizen now, and she took the test, and she's lived here for years. And my niece is half Thai and half American. And she's always telling me, like, when she goes to Thailand, because her father's still alive. Her mother passed away a number of years ago. And she says, when we go to Thailand, she wants to go with us. And I said, why? She goes, trust me, you're going to want to have me where I'm going to take you and not the tourist area, because she speaks language. And she said, you got to kind of watch. Some people will try to take advantage of you. But she goes, ultimately, it'll just make your life easier. So when we go to Thailand, eventually, we'll be paying for her ticket and she'll be coming along. But getting back to the Middle East, there's a lot of history in the Middle East, ancient history, modern history, just so much going on. And did you get to see any like cool old ruins or old, historical sites. I mean, I'm a history geek, so I love that stuff.
I mean, Petra was just, I think it's one of the wonders of the world. Petra, I would put up there with Machu Picchu in terms of just like breathtaking, and the Taj Mahal, and the Great Wall of China. Those are on the same level. Like Petra, it just looks like this kingdom, this castle. It's like the facade of a palace carved into these great red mountains. And it's just jaw-dropping, unbelievable, worth the hike, like one of the most breathtaking places I've been on the planet. And obviously going through to Jerusalem, which I wouldn't, it's visiting Israel is a heavy experience and I wouldn't go again, but seeing the Dome of the Rock and obviously the Wailing Wall. And then I was in Dubai, which is crazy because it truly is like Las Vegas of the Middle East. But then
that's what I hear.
Really cool. We're also in Qatar. I really want to go to Oman. I know Saudi Arabia actually just opened to visitors, and there are places in Saudi Arabia that sort of rival the Egyptian pyramids that, few people have seen until now. But it's interesting, I think, as an American who had a great private education, I feel like I learned so much about Henry VIII's wives. But one of the joys of travel is I feel like it's a constant history lesson because you realize the Caribbean is actually an amazing example of this too, beyond Middle East and Sub-Saharan Africa and parts of the Caribbean, Central America. There are whole peoples and histories that I didn't learn about in school. And I feel like it's a way of keep growing as a person in a way, whenever you go to a new place. And I really feel, as you mentioned, going with, your relative who's half Thai, booking, it may feel boring, but I hate when people are like, I just want a day and I'm just going to explore by myself. Like, I know how I'm going to do it. And it's like, okay, but you might be on Instagram scrolling on your phone. You're going to end up at a cafe that likely is can appeal to an American, defer to the experts if you're out of your league. I get doing it if you've been to Paris a million times. You're in Paris. Oh, you're going to go for the day. But I hate this purity of, I don't want an itinerary. Because it's like you by yourself are not going to be able to know the spots to go to. So particularly when you're in a new region.
So you've been to China, and that's kind of interesting too, because is the visa process tough for an American to get into China? I've heard so many mixed reviews about that over the years.
I found Thailand was harder because I filled out the wrong Thai visa. But the ladies were really nice at the visa app. They were like, well, this is wrong, but I think it might have been easier because I'm in New York. So I find if you can speak to a person, it's going to be easier in general. Right, I don't know if you have a dream trip and you're overwhelmed, but no, it wasn't. It was harder than say a Cambodia where it's I'm here, or a Kenya, and a Seychelles was pretty. Did I need a Seychelles visa? Yeah, I think I did. But it's in between, I would say, of the visa process. I think I got it in that. I think in general, you're supposed to apply as early as possible. But I feel like for both China and India, I didn't have more than 2 weeks, and I was 2 or 3 weeks.
That quick. Wow.
Well, China, I think I was getting my ducks in a row. Yeah, a couple of weeks before. But I went to the embassy in New York.
So what's some of the places you went in China and some of the cool things you might have seen there? I mean, it's such a big country, and China's another one. It's so diverse. It's so different from if you're a Chinese and you live on the border of Vietnam versus a Chinese person that maybe lives near Mongolia. It's
like the United States. There's the Deep South. There's the, the American West. There's the Pacific Northwest. Yeah, completely. China was one of my favorite trips of all time, and had probably, the pinch me moment I was talking about, going to India and the Taj Mahal, or Jordan and Petra. I really felt that in China. The second I landed, we started in Xi'an, which was really cool. And they have the terracotta warriors. And that was spectacular. In Xi'an, it's almost like landing, you're on another planet because you're in a country as big as America, but the architecture is so different. And you're a minority in the sense that I remember the second that I landed in, I landed in Beijing. My cab driver, he turns around and he goes, American? And I was like, yes. And he was like, I love Britney Spears. People were really I don't know. I really loved the people that I met throughout my trip. Like I found that, there are different like cultures with different approaches to things. Like Kenyan people are super chatty. People in Botswana can be a little more reserved. People in China I found are really direct, and I am very direct. And I loved it. Like, it's sort of like you went to real talk almost immediately. And I thought I would be a minor celebrity because I studied abroad in Japan in high school and was treated like I was Paris Hilton. But people weren't that. I wasn't really swarmed at all. India, I was a big deal. One of the most fascinating countries I've ever visited in my life. Beijing, the city, is so cool. Just the people, the fashion, the food, the best food I've had. I would say the best cuisine I've had in the world. It's like China, Vietnam, France, and Italy. China's number one. Everyone's like, oh, you like Chinese food? Like, you're not going to like Chinese food in China. It's so different. And I feel like that's so pretentious. If you like Japanese food in the US, it's going to be different in Japan. But if you like the general ingredients or things, China obviously has different like regional cuisine. But I went to Xi'an in Beijing, and the breakfast, like, give me an Asian breakfast for the rest of my life, like dumplings, and I want to have street lo mein, best food. Being on the Great Wall was a dream come true for me. I cried. Like, I felt oh my God. And then I went to the Forbidden City. I cried again, but you feel the history. Like, there's no way of explaining it. Like, you feel it's so tremendous.
And that's old history too. Like in the United States, like you can say, let's just say American history. You go back 250 years, maybe if you're in a place like Salem, you might be able to go back a little over 300 years. But, and then you get into like maybe some ancient Native American history in the United States, various Mexico or South America, United States. But when you're talking about, the Forbidden City, the Great Wall of China, I mean, these things were built hundreds of years, thousands of years before the United States was even thought about.
It's insane. And like if I die, I'd want to go to the Chinese or the Mexican afterlife, because I feel like in Mexico, you're like relevant all the time. You're celebrated, your spirit. China, it's like the afterlife there looks very fun, because it's like you can bring it with you. Like, people will they have the terracotta warriors that are like pretty much bringing to the afterlife. They have the whole museum where they have depictions of the Chinese afterlife, which looks more fun than my regular life. But just hearing about like the history of China and, how the Great Wall came to be and how it was protecting different provinces, and the mountains of China are gorgeous. And they've got amazing, like really amazing, like nature areas, nature regions. Like, I know skiing's taking off in Japan. I wonder when that will happen with China. But if you're someone who loves to travel, just period, I would say that has to be top 5 on your list. You want to, I feel like China, India, Jordan, Peru. I don't know. I'm just thinking like there's nowhere it's spectacular. And also you are forced to confront, like, there are different ways of life. And I find that a lot of times people will get so judgmental about things that are first world luxuries, which is like, honestly, like garbage disposal and removal, like having toilets that have toilet paper everywhere that, aren't, or having the way when you can use and when animals are pets and animals aren't, I find that people can pass a moral judgment on areas that range from like Molokai in Hawaii to like, I don't know, Bolivia, to China. And I think with travel, you're supposed to realize that they're like different. You can't impose your own Western viewpoints on everything. Yeah. The sooner, I think the more you travel, the more you stop doing that. But yeah, I feel like I went to China and Kenya back to back. And I feel like those were maybe two of the most impactful. I've been to like 99 countries now, like two of the most impactful trips in my life.
So 99 countries, 7 continents, all 50 states, all over the world, cruise ships. If anybody ever wanted to live vicariously through somebody, you are the person. I mean, you've seen it. You've seen more than 200 people together will probably see in their lifetime. And it's an there's so much amazing stories. Like I said, we could be here for hours and hours, and I'd love to have you again on the show just to talk about this. But what do we see now? We're halfway through 2025. What do we see as your next trips? Where you go? Where can we look and follow for your next adventures?
So definitely like Instagram, Twitter, my website. I am trying to take a break for like a couple months because now I've got a million stories to write. So I spent a lot of time in New England in the summertime. I am really I'm America first on summer. I think a New England summer is amazing. So, but that being said, I mean, I really want to go to Egypt and Namibia are top of my list, like absolute top. There are so many places that I have never been to Greece, which is very weird. I want to go to Greece.
That's weird. I've been places that most people don't go, but not to Greece. Like Santorini and stuff.
I really want to go to Romania because I'm Romanian, half Romanian, and I didn't go on my family trip because I went with my college boyfriend to Bermuda. So maybe that's why I became a travel writer. I was like, I need to expand. This fall, I have trips I'm discussing that are in the mix. Like I really want to do more of, I think I want to go to Bali. Like some of these places, I want to go, as mentioned, everywhere I haven't been, but there are some places that as a journalist, you feel like you need to go because the more places I've been, the richer my storytelling is because I can actually know what makes this one part of East Africa unique, for example. So I really want to go to Bali because I know people are obsessed with it. But then, Laos, we'll see. What's great is that we'll see. Like last year, I was like, I'm going to take a break unless it's Africa. And then I went to like 6 different countries in Africa. I guess I'm manifesting Western and Northern Africa right now. I don't know.
So if you could say anything to the new traveler and somebody that's maybe following into whether it's work or hobby or a little bit of both and wants to travel the world, if you could give them one big tip, one big thing from probably the most experienced traveler we've ever had on this show, what would be that one big thing be? Be
kind and talk to the locals. Like do what they're doing. Get recommendations from the concierge. Like I hate to say this. I don't hate to say this. It's just a fact. A smile, which Americans are known for smiling a lot, which is good, but like kindness is so underrated in terms of half of the coolest things that have happened to me on a trip, whether it's personal or professional, have always happened because I made a friend, and then that friend, I went to the second location, and obviously within reason, but if you are kind, curious, and vulnerable, like you make fun of yourself, and you ask a lot of questions and you're nice, like that's going to give you a different window into a location. So I can make friends on the fly now very well too, because I've traveled for so long. So I feel confident doing it. But if you don't, the local guide, like just put yourself out there in that way. The worst things I've ever seen happen are from people being rude,
Yeah. I totally agree. And, we've made friends all over the world and the world's a small place and you don't know when you're going to run into somebody and you're going to need help or you're going to need just somebody to point you in the right direction, or you just might wind up making a friend and stay in touch with them. And we've got friends all over the world and we talk to them all the time. And some of them are even closer friends to us than people that live right down the street.
There's a sign like there's no such thing as a foreign land. It's the traveler who's foreign. So sometimes, they call it sort of the airplane effect where you meet a total stranger in an unknown, unlikely situation. And then you can tell them more than you've told, a friend from high school. And there's something to that where I've loved the friendships that I've made and I'm very in touch with people all over the world who it's like, I'm a curiosity to them too. Like, look at this like American girl who I met in the bush in Botswana, in like this local village, like just have like an open mind, be curious. Like the people are the place in my experience. That's why I said Kenya for the trip, because the culture in Jordan and China, like you can go anywhere and like have a nice infinity pool and soak in a luxury bathroom, but like bathtub, but like soak in a bathroom. But what's the point of flying halfway across the world for that? You know?
When you could do that right down in your own house in some instances.
Take pictures, but try not to get hung up on taking the best picture of you're not even going to know if you like the picture of yourself until a week later anyway. Just try to be present where you are and get in the mix.
I would really like to thank you for being on our show today. And, we would definitely love to have you back as a guest in the future when you're done your next round of trips. It would be really great to have. Make sure to check out Katherine's website. We'll share at the bottom here. It's Katherine Parker-Magyar.com. She also has her social links all attached to the bottom of her website. She's also on TikTok. And go and subscribe to her. We want all our Kling Connection fam to follow her, join in our adventures. And even if you can't afford to go someplace or something like that, reach out to Katherine. She'll definitely answer any questions that you have. She was really communicative with us, and just a great person that we made a connection with. And, Katherine, we'd really like to thank you for being on today's show.
Thank you so much for having me. This was so much fun. I'm inspired now.
Thank you.
Do a regular job.
And make sure you go to the Kling Connection, subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're also on Facebook, Instagram. We're on Rumble. We're on Odyssey. We're on TikTok, and we're everywhere else, LinkedIn, that you can think of, and also www.klingconnection.com. Go there and subscribe to our blog and check out our videos and shoot us a question and maybe help us out with some Patreon that we have on there. And so until next time, have fun storming the castle.
And that's a wrap on today's episode of the Kling Connection Travel Talk podcast. Huge thanks to our guest, Katherine Parker-Magyar, for sharing her incredible travel stories and experiences. Until next time, keep exploring, one journey at a time.